Hey, once again, this is Billy with Harnessing Your Wealth. I'm here with Cade and Shaun to discuss some important matters about financial wealth and staying hooked to having that wealth for the long term. So, protecting wealth comes in a lot of different stages of life. You can earn that money, you can become financially successful, but then what? We want to talk about some things that are more common than ever before for people in this category of protecting their money legally or protecting their money through the transfer to their children and making sure that their children don't squander the money, but also protecting your money so it can serve you well later in your own life. So the things that I think come to mind initially are these blended family situations where divorces are happening at an alarming rate, right? And most times they involve children. And when you have children from two separate marriages and now you're blending them into one new family, lots of things can go wrong. We've seen it. So we'll talk about maybe legally some things to consider really quick. One, the prenup conversation needs to be had, especially if you're coming into that relationship with a substantial net worth or some assets that need to be protected. And I know prenuptial agreements are nothing exciting and can really feel awkward in a conversation with your new spouse, but I still think that it needs to be discussed. If your spouse is reluctant to marry you, if they have to sign a prenuptial agreement, then perhaps they were only looking for the money.
Might be a red flag.
It might be a
Might be
problem.
a red flag right there.
One common legal, let's call it a trust, that we like to recommend for people that when they're blending families is called a Q-tip. So remember that acronym, Qualified Terminable Interest Property. And it's a trust that can be created by an attorney, and they will know what this is about. Essentially, this trust, when assets are placed in there with the blended family, these assets will be held in safeguarding for that person's own children. So if you had a business or substantial assets and they were placed in this Q-tip trust, then they can be used by whoever, as long as that person is alive who originally owned those assets. And then if something were to happen, that person dies, the assets will eventually revert to his or her own children.
Well, you're kind of talking in, just so everyone's clear, in the blended family, right? Husband and wife gets married. And let's say wife has all the money.
Mm-hmm.
Husband did not prepare. So new husband did not prepare. Wife brings in $20 million to the estate. They get married. Well, prior to that, maybe we would set up a Q-tip trust. So if she dies, the husband is still okay financially, but he can't.
Yeah, he could live off of
He
those
can live
assets.
off of it, but he can't change the
Can't
beneficiary
change
to
the
that
beneficiary.
trust, which would likely be her children or grandchildren. So that money continues to flow down versus, she dies and it goes all to her kids at that point, and he's left on the side of the road holding a Domino's pizza.
Well, what
Fine.
we're talking about is her children in this situation.
Could get disinherited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prevent them from being disinherited.
Right.
Remember, we're talking about protecting your own money in the event of a marriage, a second marriage. So, the other thing, the final thing on this topic is make sure you talk about, if you're going to blend assets, those assets would then be subject to what's called marital property and what's a subsequent divorce. So if there's another divorce here, which second marriages are actually at a higher frequency, then those blended assets would be subject to division. So think about that, as what you're willing to put into a marital property category, and you may want to keep certain assets separate, especially if it's maybe an inheritance or something that would be considered separate asset unless you commingled it. We represent a lot of clients in our divorce planning practice that have major disagreements and huge legal bills over fights stemming from what constitutes separate property versus marital property. And of course, both parties have different opinions on that. So just giving you some really good, maybe food for thought, tips on some strategies that you can employ. You can certainly call us if you have further questions about that.
Yeah. I think jumping into, high net worth planning, ultra high net worth planning, we're always talking about trust, right? What type of trust to set up? How do we minimize tax? How do we protect assets? But a big part of having a trust is how do you pass assets down to your kids in most cases? The nice thing, everyone always kind of gets a little bit uneasy when you start talking about trust work because they think, I can't change this, or what am I doing? We're talking about dying, but it's so important to have. And one of the nice things is in trusts, you can have provisions of when your kids can access the money. Because I know everyone in here in this room has seen it where there's not been a trust or there's no provisions and mom and dad die, leave the next generation a bunch of money. And what happens?
Blow right through it.
They blow through it. They're buying Ferraris, they're buying the home they can't afford, whatever. But a common one is just like 3 different ages. So say you have minor children, and I've done this with my own trust planning with Quinn and Sloan. If you're listening to this, sorry, you're not getting it all if I die. But maybe a common age is at 25. So if I die, Kate and I pass, they can get a chunk at 25, say a third. And then maybe another one at 30. Okay, so maybe they screwed up the first time and now they're learning again. And then the last one at 35. And kind of my thought is, if you haven't grown up enough and I haven't done a good enough job as a parent at 35, if you can't figure it out, it's on you.
Yeah.
But they can also, it's not just like these 3 ages. There's a term called HEMS. So health, education, maintenance, and support. So you'll have a trustee that will determine, hey, is that need for Quinn or Sloan, health, education, maintenance, or support, and they can take distributions if needed. So it's not so locked up like some people have a fear of.
Yeah, that health, education, maintenance, support provision is nice because that does not have to follow the age brackets that you've set up. That's only for principal distributions that are beyond the scope of those categories. Other generational type planning tools are, in my opinion, are really important to help empower your kids, but not enable them. So we want to teach kids the power of money and the importance of money, but not that it comes easy. Easy come, easy go. Mm-hmm. That's a common term. There are certain very wealthy families throughout history in our country that have continued to thrive and do well. And then there's others who went through the money, I'm talking billions of dollars in inflation adjusted value, and squandered it, gone. So these are like the Carnegies or the Vanderbilts, families that came huge net worths and dominant type industry leaders. And within a couple of generations, the Vanderbilts have squandered most of it. So it's really tough to teach kids the proper handling of finance unless there's the conversation being had. So we're really big advocates on having conversation, and then make your kids put up something in order to get something. They're going to start a business. Maybe you'll help them. Even in your trust documents, you can say those things. So even if you're gone, your trust can have language that says, if you want to start a business, you can access a certain amount of money to help you get started. But you have to lay out the business plan. It has to be approved by the trustee, or you have to accomplish a certain milestone in order to get it. Those are the types of things that I think are important in a trust, because I have seen personally the kids, and I call them kids because they're inexperienced, but they have a great idea.
Yep.
Oh, business deal. I got it. Me and my buddy, we're going into business together. And it's a terrible idea from the get-go. But they spend $1 million trying to prove
get it off
a
the
good
ground.
one.
Yeah.
And it's all gone. I mean, it was a terrible idea to start with. So yeah, it has to be kind of filtered out. And again, your trust should have a limit on what can be pulled for these types of ventures, because again, starting up a business is a risk.
Sure.
And the next thing is like the inheritance.
Talking about the inheritance with your kids and grandkids without conflict.
And the conflict comes from the lack of conversation, right? Got to have the conversation. And only 27% of parents actually have the conversation with their kids, which is mind blowing because that's when the conflict comes. Kids start to argue, they want this, well, the other one wants that. And then next thing you know, you've ruined your relationship with your siblings because you're so greedy. And you never were taught the value of hard work, to appreciate that, hey, my parents had to work really hard for this. It didn't just come poof, you know. In some cases it did. Your grandparents have generational wealth, but you know, have that conversation with your kids and make it so it's not awkward. Who are the trustees going to be? You know, don't be afraid to have this conversation. It's just open. You got to teach them from a young age, and it doesn't have to be one sit down. This is a big, huge deal. You know, let that conversation start small, and eventually, as you get older, it can become a bigger deal than it is when they're, you know, 20 years old.
I find that to be a huge point, Cade, because I am one that doesn't like to shy away from these conversations personally, but I see this happen most times with clients, even that we work with, is that they're afraid of hurting someone's feelings, or they're afraid of the animosity that they may experience by sitting their children down in a room and saying, all right, I have these 5 kids, but Tom's going to be our trustee because Tom has more background in finance and seems to have a good grasp of money, whereas Sally and Joe and Jimmy and Sarah, they're, you know, you guys don't have as much experience. So Tom, and then have everybody give them the opportunity to discuss it and to think about it and to process it. But 90% of the time, it's never had. That conversation never occurs. And then mom, dad die. And then kids open up and they see the trustee. Oh, it's Tom.
Yeah.
And they're all mad.
Yeah. Why Tom?
Why I'm good with money.
I should be in charge.
Now,
I want to be in
you know,
charge.
now the 4 of us are rallying. We're pissed off at Tom. And so now we've got this tribe. And now we're mad at him, and he's feeling uncomfortable because he doesn't want to have the conflict, and he's like wishing mom and dad would have never appointed me. So what you've done, mom and dad, is you've created a conflict for everybody by failing to have the guts, I'll call it guts, to have that conversation in person.
And you don't have to tell them how much money you have. I think that's one thing I think like mom and dad, let's start there, are worried about. Well, if I tell my kids I'm worth $20 million, well, they're going to want me dead, you know, or
Cash out.
Yeah. Or they think they don't have to work anymore because they're going to get their share of it. And so it maybe makes them not want to have that conversation. But we've held these family meetings. You don't have to say one number. You just say, look, here's how things are laid out. We did this for you guys. So you know who's in charge. The distributions are going to be like this. We're avoiding a probate. Like this is all laid out and it's for you guys. And you don't have to tell them, you know, the dollar amounts. And maybe it's not for them, right? Maybe it's Warren Buffett style. It's all going to charity.
Yeah, most of it's charity.
And
In some cases, with the lack of discussion, the kids will actually have their hands out before the parents are dead.
Yeah.
I want some. I'm going to inherit it one day, right? Just give me some.
Give it to me now.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen that done. I mean, we've seen clients front an inheritance for a business idea or something, and you can put that in your trust docs. You know, I paid Tom a certain amount already. Take that out of his when I go.
Has to be written into the trust, because that's another area we've seen major conflict is when mom and dad failed to put that into their trust doc or make that known, and then the other kids know about it, but
writing it on
a
verbally or writing it on a napkin doesn't count. Get it notarized and signed.
I mean, one more real quick point on that is that this transfer and this inheritance issue is, especially if you own a business or have something that maybe 1 or 2 children are involved in and the others aren't. Well, naturally, those children are more susceptible to continuing that business or maybe owning those properties, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to figure out a way to move that into their inheritance category and not disinherit the other kids by doing so. Because sometimes maybe the business is, let's say, Jimmy is your son working in the business. The business is worth 10 million, but beyond the business, you only have $1 million.
Of cash.
That's
Yeah,
it.
liquidity, yeah.
Of other assets. So what are the other kids going to inherit? I mean, so that, and then the other main problem I'll just bring up, because this is a can of worms, that I've seen this happen, is they said, well, the other kids are all going to be equal partners. Well, then
Yikes.
Jimmy's doing all the work and he's pissed off.
Yeah, he's not going to like that. I mean, to equalize that, I mean, we've used some life insurance planning
Correct.
to help with that. Or take out like a second to die policy on mom and dad that provides some liquidity, and it could be held outside the estate too. So it's like if it's a taxable estate, we can remove that so we're not paying more taxes. Anyways, getting deep, but just a way to provide some extra cash to help with the 4 other children in this case, if someone's going to get the majority of their inheritance through an illiquid business.
One more thing I'll say on inheritance is a common mistake we see that parents will say, Tom's the best with money. I'm going to put his name on everything. And then when I die, he can give it to his siblings. Tell him why that's horrible.
Well, he can't, I mean, he can give it to him, but it's going to be a tax nightmare for him, because you can technically only give $19,000 a year right now per person, without getting into filing a gift tax return. But you did the work to create these documents, these trusts that Billy's been talking about. It's very important to retitle your assets into these trusts. And it's not a Schedule A in the back of the trust document. It's going to each custodian, whether it's a bank or a Raymond James or whoever it is, and say, I made a trust, put my accounts into this trust.
Yeah. You can't just put the name the asset in the trust document and say, this is going to go. No, it actually has to be owned that way at the custodian. So remember that. It's hugely important.
Or with real estate, the county recorder.
All that. You file it, have the deed retitle. It's just a quick claim deed. Change the ownership from joint or personal to trust. But maybe just a little bit more on Cade's point there. If one child, you expected them to just distribute the rest of the assets out to the family. There are ways to do that in the estate by disclaiming the asset, but it's a nightmare, because you're gonna have to hire an attorney, deal with the probate issues, and then again have the mixed feelings from maybe your siblings of, why do you have control of the money? Did I get it all? What did you do with it? And perhaps maybe you made some decisions that you thought were smart or wise, but the others didn't. On how you took it, how you sold. Why did you sell? That property went up, that stock went up. You sold it. Well, why didn't you sell it? It went down. You see,
guys, it's a lot of work to be a trustee. Some people think it's an honor, but it's a lot of work.
It is.
I mean, you can have more than one trustee, right? In case
co-trustees
are
I actually advocate, I actually prefer, because then they have maybe a sounding board, and you can't just rally against one person and you're not leaving it all to them. The other thing is there's financial trustees, and then there's the healthcare trustees. So your medical, your decisions on your health can be dealt with in a power of attorney situation that can be added. So we always recommend, when you're doing your trust, power of attorneys on both of those categories are important. And your trustees need to be very well thought out. So make sure that they're the people that know something about what you're doing.
And try not to name someone way older than you. We see that too.
That's a problem.
Likely they're going to die before you, and then you're back to your backup trustee.
Some people don't trust any of their kids.
Yeah. So name a corporate trustee. Didn't you?
Yeah.
You just said that, right?
No,
or
that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's where you're headed? Yeah. So you can name most custodians will have a corporate trustee department. So Raymond James offers one. We've used it in multiple scenarios, and it takes the emotion out of it. So you have a trust officer, and then you keep the financial advisors involved as well. And it works really good. Now they charge for their services, obviously. But if it makes sense in certain cases, then a corporate trustee is a great option.
Now that we've talked about how to handle the transfer of your wealth, maybe setting up next generation or inheritance, whether you're the receiver or the person giving, transferring, we're going to make sure that you haven't failed to plan for your own life, because there's planning for your kids and your grandkids, but what about yourself? The last thing we want to do is have you transfer all the money out into irrevocable trusts or give it all away for the benefit of your children to go to school or to open a business and then fail to get through your own life successfully. And now Cade was looking up the statistics a minute ago. The percentage of people in our country that have a financial plan tops out at 36%, which is unbelievable to me. Is like, if you don't have a plan, you really don't have any idea where you're going to end up. So we're really big here in our office on planning. Most women who we work with appreciate planning more than our male clients. And I think that's just how they're built. They like to know that they're on solid ground and where they're going before they just jump in the car and start driving. And that's what we're doing here is financial planning, is making sure that you have the wherewithal, the financial resources, and the budgeted items to get you from where you're at now all the way through the end of your life, with all the different things that you want to do along the way. You know, the goals that you have, the spending planning, the new things that you'd like to do, the experiences you'd like to have, the gifts you'd like to give. All of that ties back into financial planning. I think it's critical.
Yeah.
Yep.
Estate planning, 32% of the population has an estate plan. So don't be one of the 32. And especially if you're in a blended family, guys, that's where it's really critical, because we're going all the way back up to the first topic. Blended families, you are really in the situation of needing to plan, needing to get not only a financial plan, but the estate plan, and consider all parties. All right. The conversation is critical. We're here to help you with that. If any of you find yourselves in these categories, you're wondering about transfer, you're wondering about the different trusts that you can create, finding liquidity, equalizing your estate plan, not outliving your own income in retirement, give us a holler. That's what we're here for. Thanks for joining us for Harnessing Your Wealth today. Stay tuned for some more financial episodes as we bring timely topics out there your way. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for listening. For more information about today's show, please check out the show notes. Visit our website at www.petersonws.com or give us a call at 801-475-4002. Peterson Wealth Services is a registered investment advisor. This is a paid-for advertisement. Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up-to-date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of a personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Peterson Wealth Services.